hammer and a chisel. And if you look at the history of the world, till about 200 years ago, all the buildings all over the world were made by architects who had this skill. No other skill was required. Skill of handling tools was enough for you to become an architect. So if you look at the history of architecture world or history of the world, you will find that you will find a very rare name of a lady architect. I don't know if you have wondered about it. Historically, till 200 years ago, we don't see the names of women as architects. At least I have searched, but I haven't come around across names of women practicing as architects, say 200 or 300 years ago. All architects, by architects, I mean people who were constructing buildings, designing and constructing buildings. All architects were people or were men, and they were men who were work with their hands. But 200 years ago, everything changed. Some architecture profession, the way architecture profession is expressed, changed. You could express everything by using a pencil and paper. Whatever is there in your mind, you could express using your fingertips by drawing it on paper. That credit also goes to some mathematicians and some artists who were born in 17th and 18th century, who showed the world how to represent an object through drawings. Now, representing an object through drawings was not known to people till about 200 or 300 years ago. If you look at the uh, uh, history of mathematics, especially the subject called geometry. There's a subject called descriptive geometry. It evolved sometime in 17th or 18th century. And through the study or discoveries in descriptive geometry, artists realized that objects can be represented as plan, elevation, and section, which is today very, very fundamental to the way we represent buildings through drawings. Whole idea of plan, elevation, and section was not known to people till about 200 or 300 years ago. So when this was discovered, architects left the field and came to what is known as the drawing board. There was no drawing board before. Before 200 years ago, there was no drawing board. So architects came back to what is known as the drawing board and started drawing or visualizing. So that is where architects started now living between mind and fingertips. Earlier, architects were living between mind and fingertips with very, very strong hands to work with, using tools and making use of tools and building materials to construct whatever was there in their mind as a design. But when architects left the field and started sitting on the drawing board, they started using pencil and later on many other tools to create their visions in the form of drawings. Imagine the situation of those first few architects or designers who made the drawings, plan and elevation section of buildings. It's a very interesting story about how the idea of plan and elevation and section developed. I think I must share this story. I have many people, but it'll be interesting for you to know. You know, it happened during the time of Napoleon. Napoleon was very much interested in battles. If you have heard, if you know the history. So, he wanted to take his, that was the time when gunpowder was discovered or invented and cannons were made. You know, gunpowder was being used for shooting cannonballs. So the problem with cannons was that they were very heavy and they took a long time for the cannons to be rolled to a battlefield. So Napoleon asked one of the mathematicians in his cabinet to find a solution to this. How is it possible to reach the cannon to the battlefield very fast? Now imagine Napoleon asked this to a mathematician. And the mathematician is called the father of descriptive geometry. His name was Gaspard Monge. He developed the idea of plan and elevation and section. And what was the use of this idea? You see, he created a drawing of cannon. He said that let us break the cannon into three parts. So it becomes lighter. Each part will be carried by 3 or 4 parts, and each part will be carried by a horse rider on his back. All right. So three or four horse riders will carry the cannon in parts on their back. So they will reach very fast to the battlefield. And once they reach the battlefield, the cannon needs to be assembled. Now, this was the problem. Assemble the cannons. So that is how the idea of making a drawing came, an assembly drawing. So history's first assembly drawing was created by this mathematician called Gaspard Monge, a French mathematician, who created plan and elevation and section to represent the cannon, how to assemble the parts and how to fix it so that you can start using the cannon. The result was that Napoleon started winning all the battles after that. Because the moment a war was announced or something, he could very easily, very quickly take his cannons to the field. But then for quite some time, this idea of making plan and elevation section remained a secret. It was battle secret. For example, internet was a big secret of US Army for a long time. It was always there with US Army, if you don't know. But internet today is democratically shared by everyone all over the world. But it was always there with the US Army for a long time. And they were using it for surveillance purposes. So similarly, this plan and elevation section was a major secret for a long time with French people. But slowly during Renaissance period, this idea got into the hands of various artists. Brunelleschi was one of them who created perspective drawing, idea of making perspective. So that is history now, history of perspective drawing, history of descriptive geometry, history of making plan, elevation, and section. And that happened between the mind and fingertips of architects who were born in 18th century. So from 18th century till 20th century, architects used their mind and their fingertips to create design on paper and transfer the drawings to the construction site. So the entire educational system focused from 18th century to 20th century on teaching in what is known as studios how to design, how to draw using pencil and paper on a drawing board. I am one of the products of such a learning system. But 200 years back, if you wanted to become an architect, you had to go and work under one mason or a carpenter, learn the skills of the carpenter or a mason, and then over a period of time, after working for 10, 15 years, when your mason guru decides that, okay, you have become a guru, he will release you and you start your own practice. There was nothing called giving a licensing exam or anything. When your guru feels that you are good, you can start your own practice, you get a project and start making buildings. That is how Taj Mahal was constructed. That's how St. Peter's was constructed. That's how all the historic buildings all over the world, including all our temples, Periyakovil, the temples in Tamil Nadu that you see all over the world, all these ancient buildings are constructed by architects who worked as apprentice under other architects. But in 18th century onward, it changed. Schools of architecture started. Bauhaus, as you know, historically, those who have studied history of architecture know the Sigma Bauhaus School of Architecture, where experiments were done on developing different systems of design. Basic design itself as a subject evolved in the Bauhaus School of Architecture. So everywhere this second tool, that is pencil as a tool and drawing paper as a medium, was used to represent architecture. Not real architecture, but representative dream architecture. Then came the 20th century when computers evolved and AutoCAD as a tool developed, actually developed by mechanical engineers for making basic drawings, machine drawings. But it got caught on, and when the mouse got discovered, mouse got invented, several softwares, we call them softwares, came with which we work in the virtual world of a computer or a laptop. We do the same thing. We create drawings, but in the virtual world. And instead of making it as a physical reality, the drawings became a virtual reality. You print only when you need. Otherwise, the drawing remains inside the computer, inside the CPU of the computer. So that was the situation which evolved just about 22 years back. I was already a practicing architect, deep into my profession, and I was also teaching when this computer world came. So all my knowledge of computer world is because I became a self-taught person. I had to learn all by myself, this new medium which was coming. That is a third and which has survived and which is continuing to survive. But before I continue with the presentation, let me tell you that we are also right now at this moment, we are sitting on the cusp of a new revolution. And 20 years from now, the way architecture is practiced will be totally different from the way architecture is being practiced today. What is that cusp of the revolution? It will be 3D printing of buildings. It will totally mechanized, robotic, and computer program oriented designing of buildings. And there is a big change required in the way we approach architectural education today and architectural practice today if the present generation of architects and the future generation of architects have to survive, because this third mouse will also be abundant tool very soon in a couple of years of time. So and we can see our life also has totally changed in the last 20 or 30 days or a month. We are communicating like this. We are having a classroom like this. This time I am sitting at home, talking to hundreds of people sitting at their own respective home. So this will also play a major role in the way architecture is being taught or will be taught in future by appropriate digital connectivity to the real world. So what will happen is we will live between mind and fingertips, but will be connected to the real world through digital connectivity. That is going to be the new reality in the next 20 years or so. So architects live between mind and fingertips, have always lived between mind and fingertips. In the past, the distant past, in the recent past, and today also we live between mind and fingertips. But how to be an architect? How do we go about studying architecture, learning architecture? Whether you are a fresher or whether you are already into it, or whether you are a practicing architect, there are some fundamentals which we cannot ignore, and we should come back to the fundamentals so that we continue to explore there as a creative profession. Today we know that the fundamental aptitude required for architecture that is asked for is you should have drawing skills and you should have what is known as aesthetic sensitivity, which is a very, very commonly used terminology today by everyone. That if you have drawing skills and if you have aesthetic sensitivity, you can appear for NATA, or if you can do JEE exam in India or anywhere in the world, you can appear for an aptitude test. And if you clear that with these skills, you can become an architect. So what is the meaning of the drawing skills? Now I'm talking to the very, very, freshers who want to become architects. In this crowd which is listening to me, I'm talking to people who want to become architects. Drawing skills, what do you mean by drawing skills? If you want to become an architect, you must have this kind of minimum skill that you see here. This is all imaginary drawing or drawings created by looking at objects. You should have the ability to sketch an object proportionately and make them look appealing, visually appealing, using techniques. Now, this is very, very important. If you don't have this skill, many people don't have this skill. Out of 100, if you do a survey, only 10 or 15 people may have this skill. That means that the remaining perhaps do not have the desirable skill as of today. This may change tomorrow because I told you we are on a cusp of new revolution. This skill may not necessary tomorrow to become an architect. I don't know. It may happen like that. We are not very sure about it. But minimum this skill is required. You should be able to visualize objects. You should be able to sketch objects. You should be able to see. You should be able to see light very clearly. You should be able to see what is the direction of light. Extremely important. What is the direction of light is something which you have to learn to visualize. Sorry. What exactly is the direction of light? Why is it important? Imagine this is a building, and if this is 10 o'clock in the morning, there is shadow here. I hope you understand that. As the sun keeps moving in the sky, the shadow will shift position. Building doesn't move, but the shadow is the one which moves because the sun moves from morning till evening in the sky. Building is a static object. So when you design a static object like a building on a site, you have to be very careful about how you are orienting the building, how the building is placed on the site such that there are wonderful shadow zones created for summer and non-shadow zones or uh, sunshine zones created during winter. Now this needs very good visualization. That is why architects need to be very good visualizers of looking at a site property and deciding how you will design a building in such a manner that it will be comfortable both in summer as well as in winter, not to talk about rains. So now let us take a look at what exactly should you know to make good drawings. You should have a sense of perspective drawing. When we say perspective drawing, it means how do you see things in reality? In reality, we see things in depth. Whatever is close to us appears to be big. Whatever is far away from us appears to be small. This is simple common sense. So when you sketch something, when you sketch an object, that reality of perception should be there in the drawing that you make. That is, distant objects should be looking small, closer objects should look big. That is called the sense of perspective drawing. Now, these are all what sketches I am showing you are all done by students, freshers. So it shows their vision. You should also have a very good vision on combining shapes, because if you look at a building carefully, you will notice that a building is nothing but a combination of so many different shapes put together, stuck together, supporting each other, piled up over one another. If you study a building, so they are nothing but different shapes put together. So combination, how to combine different shapes together is an ability, and by combining shapes together, you create spaces for use. This is a very simple explanation or definition of an architecture. That is, in architecture, you put together different shapes in such a manner that it becomes a stable structure which encloses space, which can create a comfortable environment. So this kind of skill is necessary of visualizing objects. Then comes the sense of color. You should have a very good sense of color, how to use color, how to create two-dimensional compositions using different types of shapes and forms. And if you are appearing for NATA test or any test, you will notice that you are given such projects, such questions to solve. Create a composition using numbers, create a composition using shapes, and so on, just to test your skill of coloring, your skill of color sense, color combinations, etc. So this is another important skill which architects should have. Creating wonderful how to create very pleasing color harmonies, because color is an essential part of architecture, and not only external world, but more specifically internal world. The world of interiors in architecture is an extremely important world where color plays a very dominant role in creating a good environment. So that is why this skill is also tested when you want to study architecture. Then understanding of scale and proportion. Scale and proportion is a complex subject, but I can very simply explain it to you with an example of, say, a human being. Everything that you visualize an architect should be proportionate to a human being. That's all. That is something which you have to follow when you make a sketch, when you visualize something. Now, in this sketches that you see here, there are human beings all over, different size human beings. But the objects which you see in the environment, they all appear to be proportionate to the human beings. A kite drawn proportionate to the human being. A pillar, a building, objects in the environment, when you draw, they should look proportionate and scale to the human being. Some more examples. You can see different types of human beings, small children, old people, young people, fat people, tall people. But there has to be a sense of proportion between objects in the environment and the people that you draw by way of sketches. Is there any problem? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, yes, sir. Sir, I think we can hear you, sir.
Yes, sir.
And you can see also, because suddenly there
Yes, sir.
was some kind of a, yeah, okay, all right, I'll continue. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So drawing from memory through pencil sketch on themes. So these are some examples. The next thing which is spoken about as aesthetic sensitivity is visualizing three-dimensional objects from two-dimensional drawings. Drawings, as you know, are two-dimensional objects. But in the world of two-dimension of drawings, we draw three-dimensional objects. Now, visualizing three-dimensional objects from two-dimensional drawings. Objects as three-dimensional forms. This is another skill as part of aesthetic sensitivity. This image is very expressive. You can see there is a central object, which is a three-dimensional object, but what you see floating around are two-dimensional representation of the surfaces of the object. I hope you can understand that. This is an object. This surface is a representation of this surface. This surface is a representation of the top. This surface is a representation. These are all two-dimensional surfaces. They represent part of a three-dimensional object which is there in the center. We call these plans and elevations, we call it as projections onto surfaces as drawings. So this is another visualization. So let us see how learning of architecture takes place. Now till now I was speaking about the skills required to become an architect. Now I will talk about what is learning architecture. How do you learn architecture over a period of 5 years? You see, long ago, I told you, if you wanted to learn architecture, you have to go and work under a mason or a carpenter and learn from him the skills of using chisel, saw, plane, right angle, plumb, all kinds of tools. And you have to use your vision or your human eyes judgment. You make a wall, you make a rafter or craft something. Block by block, you will make a building. But you have to use your vision to decide when to stop, whether it is proportionate, whether it is appropriate. You have to depend on your vision. This was long ago, almost 200 years ago. All buildings which are constructed all over the earth more than 200 years ago were all constructed with this kind of method of learning and execution. And these are the kind of tools which were used. These kind of tools are even used today, but only people who work on the site. Architects actually don't use these tools today. Today's architects don't use these tools. They leave it to the masons and the carpenters to use these tools to create the dreams which architects have. So these are all the tools which were used in the ancient past, which are continuously being used even today by skilled persons to give shape to the visions of architects. Okay. Imagine these are the kind of buildings which are constructed. I am just showing example of our country. I have just taken two states, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, to show you what fascinating buildings exist in our country, in just the two states of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, which were created entirely by hands. There were no drawings made of these buildings. But how beautiful, how comfortable, you will know only if you visit them. See? So this is the situation all over the world of historic buildings. The history of architecture, study of history of architecture tells us the fantastic skills which people had in ancient past of using their hands to create wonderful buildings without making any drawings. Okay. But what was the important skill which they had? They had great sensitivity to texture and strength of building materials. They understood the building material which they were using. Today, when you learn architecture, you sit on a drawing board and draw, or you sit on a computer and draw. But without this knowledge of what is the strength of the building material which you are finally going to use on a construction site, what is the use, what are the properties of those building materials, it is pointless learning to design and draw either in a computer or on a drawing board. So what I am trying to say is that though architects don't construct buildings with their hands, it is very important for an architect to know how it is done using hands, because without that knowledge, you cannot design buildings. This knowledge is taught to you in your classroom in a subject called building construction, which is not simply to be making drawings, but to be understood thoroughly by making construction site visits and actually standing on the site and looking at how buildings are being constructed, how material is used very sensitively, how strength of building materials is understood by the mason, by the carpenter, and how you should develop your own vision about how these materials are being used by these people on the construction site. This becomes a very, very important skill, which today you have to learn by visiting construction site. So in 18th century, what happened was learning architecture changed. Pencil, pen, paper, T-square as a tool appeared, which was not there in the ancient times. Square, ink, color, all these things appeared, and again you use your skill to draw like this plan elevation section, and the drawings are issued to the construction site where another group of people try to read the drawings. If they don't understand, they call you to come to the construction site, explain to them what you have drawn so that they could construct the building the way you have visualized. Now I belong to that generation which learned like this. I was a student in 1970s. Computers had not come then. So our education was based entirely on making drawings like this and sending the drawings to construction site. And these are the kind of tools which I learned. I'm sure today's generation doesn't know what these tools are, because very few people know how to use these tools today, because computers have come in a big way, and most people by the time they reach second year start using computers as a tool. And most of these tools have become more or less redundant today. But we in our generation did everything using these kind of tools to prepare drawings of buildings. Okay. Today, mouse, keyboard, display screens, softwares, they work on heavy duty hardware called computers or CPU. But we sit before them, like right now I'm sitting, I'm holding this mouse. This picture you see here is actually right in front of me. I'm holding the mouse and I'm using the CPU, the computer. And all I do is I just move my fingers and I can talk about architecture. So this is the reality today. Today's learning tools for architecture are this. And this is what you learn when you join any school of architecture today. To how to represent architecture in the virtual world of computers and software. But that doesn't take away the importance of hand. Today also we have to use hand. We have to use hand and gestures. Mouse, we have to still use hand and fingers to create gestures and movements. Before this, my generation used again hands and movement and gestures using finger, pencils and pen. And before that, my generation, there are still today sculptors and architects living who use again their hands and fingers and tools to create work of architecture. So hand to mouse to gestures, this will remain a reality forever, whatever may be the tool which you use. So let me try to summarize what is the aptitude required for an architect or architecture student today. You should definitely have freehand sketching skills. This is a skill which is important, because when you show that you can do a freehand, why it is important? Many people say, no, this is not important today, or in future it is not important to become an architect. But come on, this is the only tool today with which you can show that you know something. You can visualize something. How do you show your visualization in the absence of any gadget like a computer or your mobile phone? You don't have any gadget in your hand. How do you show that you are visualizing something? If there is sand before you, you can use your finger and draw on the sand and show. If you have a pencil and a paper in your hand, you can draw and show. So freehand sketching skill is extremely important. It was important even in the times of chisel and hammer also, because those days also artists would sketch, they would draw. Drawing has part of architect's skill development. So freehand drawing skills. Technical, a carpenter, a good carpenter is nothing but a very good craftsman. The craftsman, he creates objects as a craftsman, a carpenter. Color handling skills, of course, not only having color sense, but how color is to be used also should be known to you, because you as an architect have to tell your painter on the site how to mix color, how to get the right kind of color that you want in the interior or exterior. So your color handling skills also you should have. Of course, above all is visionary mind. You should have a very visionary mind. If you don't have a visionary mind, forget it. You can't become an architect. So how do we test whether you have a visionary mind? Just ask you to sketch, ask you to paint something, ask you to draw something, ask you to make something. And that is the kind of test which is conducted by way of NATA or JEE. If you look at all the question papers of NATA and JEE, or any kind of aptitude test anywhere in the world to become an architect, you will find it is your vision that is being tested. How visionary are you? And how beautifully you can transfer that vision which you have in your mind, using your fingers, using your skills onto a paper. So this is what is tested. And then comes computing skills. Computing skills are, right now, computing skills are not tested. All you have to do is click on some multiple choice questions if you are doing an online test. But I'm very sure that very soon computing skills also will become very, very, very important as part of aptitude test. It will be important because so many new tools are coming in the market. Computing skills, programming, especially computer programming, is definitely going to become a very important requirement to study architecture. If not today, but definitely in the next 10 years, I'm sure computer programming will become a very important tool, because most of the constructions, most of the handling of tools, equipments, machinery will happen using robots. Robotics will become a play important role. So how robots have to be managed will have to be done through computer programming. And if it is an architectural design, if it is a design of a window to be manufactured on site by robots, if it has to be, a wall needs to be constructed using 3D printing, how how robotic intervention will happen, how you will give commands to the 3D printer on site, all these things you will have to have a very good knowledge of the program which is behind the scenes working, because something goes wrong with the program, you as a designer will have to tweak the program, you'll have to work on the program to change the program. Or so your knowledge of computer programming is going to become a very, very important skill in future of architectural learning. Okay, so this is the aptitude required for architects, architecture education. Now let me tell you, this is known to all the architecture students who are presently studying, and also known to all the architects who are practicing or teachers, but this is not known to newcomers. Many a times I have heard, even many people ask me, also parents ask me, why it is 5 years, why not 4 years, why not 3 years? It's a very interesting question. Why is it 5 years? Why is it even today it is 5 years? Why should you need 5 years to become an architect? Doctors are becoming doctors in 4 years. I also agree on that. I also feel that you don't need 5 years. But then the system has to change. The system has not changed. We are still stuck with the 5-year idea, but it is not necessary, I feel. Maybe it will change in future. But as of now, the 5-year course, which is divided, I'm just showing a broad division of learning curve, as I would say. First year in the learning curve, you learn how to represent a design. That is, colors and making models. All you're learning is how to show architectural design on in different mediums, using computers or drawing paper or on drawing board. So in first year, you learn architectural design representation. By the time you reach second year, you need to learn structure and construction. You start learning structure and construction. Whatever you're representing, how it is to be constructed, how building materials need to be used in different ways to develop an architectural design. This kind of learning happens by the time you reach second year. By the time you reach third year, parallelly, you should also understand building services. That is, building is not a static, building is not a usable entity unless it has got all the comforts plugged in into it: water supply, sanitation, electricity, hot water supply, and so on. So these are all technology oriented subjects which are grouped under MEP, or building services, which also is extremely important if you want to become an architect. Parallelly, you have to pay a lot of attention to these subjects along with structure and construction if your design has to become a buildable. I feel that by the time you reach third year, you are fit to go on a construction site, because you can learn enough in 3 years as an architect, as far as design of a building. Because whether it is a small house or a high-rise building, there are only three parts to any building. One is the foundation, second is the superstructure, and the last is the finishing. If you understand foundation, superstructure, you have understood a building. Whether it is a 100-storied building or a single-storied building, it has only three parts. So in 3 years, it is possible to understand structure, construction, building services, and how to represent them through different mediums like manual drawing or drawing. And you are almost ready to go for professional training under an architect who benefits for professional training. As a matter of fact, learning should be 3 years or professional training, whenever you feel that you have learned enough to take your licensing exam. So if you ask me personally, I believe that architecture can become a 3 year course. It is possible. It's very important to earn. You earn pittance. That's a problem with most architects, even after studying for working for hard for 5 years. So it is possible to have a course in which you learn the fundamentals in 3 years. Apprentices learn on site, and as and when you feel that you have to give your thesis degree, thesis project or whatever, do a licensing examination, and over a period of time you become. So I am calling it the syllabus version 0. This is a version 0 which I have created. This version is of, I hope, Council of Architecture or some such agencies think about starting from zero, ground zero of architectural education, because it is high time we started from ground zero of architectural education. We take a relook at how architectural education is happening. So this is something which I had created, and I feel that it is possible, though, but still we continue to stretch this learning curve to 5 years. I hope it changes in future. So then what happens? Whether you learn in 3 years or 5 years, when you come out, what you do architecture. Now, let me tell you something very frankly to all those who are listening to me. Don't call yourself an architect when you have got a degree. You are not fit. You can call yourself an architect the day you construct a building which is designed by you. That can happen when you are in first year architecture also. When you are in second year architecture also, somebody may say, your father may ask or your uncle may ask, hey, design a building for me, design my house. And you may design a house in your second year for your uncle. I designed my uncle's house when I was in third year. So I started calling myself an architect from third year because I designed a house for my uncle. It got constructed. I was so happy. Those days there was no selfie camera. Otherwise, I would have taken a selfie in front of that building and announced that I have become an architect. So you call yourself an architect not when you get a degree. Never. You can't. You don't call yourself an architect till you construct a building which you have designed. That can happen in first year. It can happen in second year. It can happen anytime. It may never happen. You may get a degree. You may go. There are so many people who join teaching, who go here and there, who never construct even a boundary wall, but they call themselves an architect. I know of such people, but that is not correct. You call yourself an architect. You are doing architecture. You are constructing and designing and constructing buildings of different scales. Then you are an architect. Okay. So there are so many other disciplines into which, fortunately, an architect can enter, which is not possible for other professionals. See, a mechanical engineer has to lifelong remain a mechanical engineer. A chemical engineer has to lifelong remain a chemical engineer. At the most, he can think of becoming a management expert or somebody. Correct? An electronics engineer is lifelong stuck with electronic engineering, but not an architect. You see, this is the one beauty of this professional education, that this gives you exposure to different aspects of human life, not just the skill of designing buildings, but because buildings are occupied, lived in by people, used by people, it gives you access to different aspects of human life and thus prepares you to do different things which can be done based on what you have learned fundamentally as an architecture student learning architecture. For example, landscape design. Once you become an architect, you can easily become a landscape designer because the fundamentals are the same. All you need to do is you learn horticulture, and you can easily become a landscape designer. You can become an interior designer, though there are many courses to become an interior designer, but it is not necessary to join another course to become an interior designer. Once you study architecture, the fundamentals you learn are good enough. If you have good color sense, good material sense, good sense of detailing, you can easily start practicing an interior designer. So the study of architecture actually opens up lots of avenues depending upon your own personal likings and your personal inclinations. Landscape architect, interior designer, and product designer. Not necessary that you have to design buildings. You may end up designing cars, you may end up designing aircrafts, because the fundamentals that you learn as a designer of buildings, those fundamentals remain true to fundamentals of design of any product in this world. You can even become a fashion designer after studying architecture. With little bit of tweaking of your knowledge, you can start a boutique if you have a good color sense and material sense of fabric, using fabric as a material. So this opens up different avenues. This is something to be remembered, which doesn't exist in other disciplines. So product design. Then comes furniture design. There are so many architects who get into furniture design as a very important profession. Now, these are set design. There are so many architects who work on film sets, and movies like movies in which Rajinikanth and all these people appear. Sets are created; they are designed by architects. So, set design, web design, working in the design field in the internal world of computers, all these things are open to you because when you study architecture, you develop a wonderful sense of color, composition, object making, and study of shade and shadows, textures. All these are fundamentals which are required to do any kind of design in the real world. So it opens the doors for you to participate in the world of design as a designer. So what are the career opportunities? Any of these disciplines you can select. You can practice independently, which is the best option because it gives you freedom. It gives you fame, name. You get tremendous satisfaction by saying that, okay, this building is designed by me, it is done by me. You may work in as an employee in a small, medium, or large multinational firm, but then there you will be just one person sitting in front of a computer or a drawing board or a model making unit doing something. You are one part of one big organization. You can never say claim that you have done this. So practicing independently is the best choice. Then of course higher studies and research, which I believe you should do only after several years of practice. Nobody should go into higher studies and research and teaching without at least, I mean, this is what I feel, at least 10 years of practice. Become a bachelor of architect, work for 8-10 years, then decide you really go for higher studies and research and teaching, or you should not continue, enjoy your practice, because you will discover that what you are really good at only by working for 5-6 years, 7-8 years. You are doing 5 years of course, at least give 5 years of unlearning of what you have learned in the college and learn all over again on a construction site or designing building. At least 5 years after 5 years of graduation. After that, you sit back and decide whether you should go for higher studies. Or so it is not right to immediately jump after BRs to MRs and PhD and so on. A lot of people are doing it, but to me it appears very silly because you have absolutely no. It's very simple. It's very simple because architecture is a creative discipline. A creative discipline needs expression to show whether you have become skillful or not. So how do you express? You don't express by making drawings and portfolios and say that I am an architect. You do it, you show that you have a skill of becoming an architect, not by showing portfolios, but by showing a building that you have designed. The day you show a building that you have designed, you can say that you are an architect, not by showing your portfolio. Please remember this. All those who are planning to study architecture here, all those who are already into architecture, all those who are practicing, you don't show portfolio and say I'm an architect. You show a building and say I'm an architect. This is what I have designed. So career opportunities, the best career opportunity, if you ask me, is practicing independently at least for 8-10 years, and then you decide to change your career, go for higher studies, research, or teaching, or whatever. So I am coming to the conclusion of my talk. I'll just show you some slides which will tell you what actually is vision of an architect. What do you mean by visionary architects? And it doesn't come overnight. You have to work hard for several years to become a visionary architect. See, if you want to become a singer, you have to sing. Without singing, you can never become a singer. And to become a singer, you don't have to go to any school of music. You can sing in your bathroom and become a singer. But that kind of devotion is required to become a singer. To become an artist, you don't have to go to a school of art. You can become an artist if you have that devotion. Same thing, to become an architect, you have to have a total devotion to develop your visionary sense of vision, how to develop your visionary mind. So, whatever you see in the world around you are images. The world which you see with your eyes outside, they're all images, three-dimensional environment, which is which you are seeing as an image. When you blink, do you know that when you blink with your eyes, you are capturing that what you are seeing as a picture in your mind and it is stored in your memory. So look at this picture. This was seen by somebody sometime. Actually, it's a very interesting story. This picture was seen by one architect. In fact, he was watching this, sipping beer, sitting in a restaurant, and he developed an idea. His visionary mind produced this. He produced this sketch. He produced this model, and that became this building. I hope you know which this building is. Most of you architecture students or architects should know which this building is. For those who do not know which this building is, building is called Burj Al Arab, which is one of the tallest, not tallest anymore, but once upon a time, about 15, 20 years back, it was the tallest hotel building in the world. It is in Dubai, off the coast of Dubai. So this is a building, 65-storied building. The whole idea evolved from that simple view of a boat, of a sailboat. Architect saw this, immediately he got an idea. He sketched that idea, and that visionary idea became a reality of a 65-storied building. This is how visionary mind works. It is not easy converting an idea into a building. It's not easy. You have to, it is like a tapasya. You have to do a tapasya for 5-10 years to become like this. Well, who was this architect? His name is John Tom Wright. He used to work for Atkins and Associates architects firm. He is the architect behind, nobody knows that this is Tom Wright, the architect who designed, because he was working for Atkins, one of the largest design and construction company in the world. So architects are visionary folks. This is the single man's vision, which became that building. The credit for that building goes to Atkins and Associates who designed that building. But this single man, while he was sipping beer, he saw this boat and he sketched this and decided into a very iconic building. Today's everyone who goes to Dubai goes and sees this building, this hotel building. So architects are visionary folks. I don't have to tell all those who are architects here or architects here who this lady is. One of the most visionary lady architects, or I would say, I don't want to say lady architect, one of the most visionary architects of our century, Zaha Hadid. If you look at her buildings, shows the amount of vision she had, and those first architects to take to computers like fish takes to water. You know, she was one of the first architects to use computers and programming to develop such fascinating build forms. She's no more, but then she has left behind fascinating build forms to her credit in this world. And there are big masters, Frank Lloyd Wright, a great visionary architect. They did not become architects overnight. Frank Lloyd Wright had no education. He was a farmer. He never went to a school of architecture. How did he become an architect? By hands-on working, by working under another architect called Louis Sullivan. He worked under Louis Sullivan. He was a farmer's son. But he was interested in drawing, so he went and joined Louis Sullivan's office, and over a period of time became an architect, and he became a master architect. Corbusier, who designed the Chandigarh city, he never studied architecture. He partly studied architecture, but he was a wonderful draftsman. So his vision, he's become a master over a period of time. So if you are a visionary person, you will anyway become architect. You may or may not study a formal 5-year course, but you will definitely become an architect. Then we have our own masters in our country, Professor Balakrishna Doshi, Pritzker Award winner. We have several such masters in our own country who worked for years together, a lot of hard work for years together to become what they became today. It is not an overnight journey. It's not a 5 years journey or a 8 years journey, 10 years journey. It's a journey of a lifetime that makes you a visionary architect. So Charles Correa. This was his first project as a fresh architect. Even today, it is a masterpiece work. He came back from US after his BR's degree and did this project in Ahmedabad, the Gandhi Ashram. And he showed his masterly skills as a fresh architect. So visionary architects are born, visionary people are born, and through their sheer hard work and determination, they create a world for themselves. Of course, we can't forget the great master of hands-on architecture, Mr. Laurie Baker, who hardly made drawings. He would always make buildings. Of course, he made drawings, but he would say making with hand is more important than making that drawing. The drawing is there only for as a tool, just a representation to show what we are planning to do. But the reality is actually making it with your own hands. So hands-on skills are extremely important, even if you use computer or pencil or whatever. But knowing how a construction worker works on site is a very, very important piece of knowledge which all architecture students must have and architects must have, because it is they who create your building. You are not the creator of buildings which you visualize. It is those people on construction site, those poor masons and carpenters and people who stand in sunshine and work morning till evening, who are actually giving shape to your vision. So they are the real architects, and you must appreciate their skills, and you must also stand with them and learn those skills so that you can design better. So I would like to thank all of you for showing the patience to try and understand why architects should live between mind and fingertips. And this is it. Historically, architects have lived between mind and fingertips. And in future also, if you are planning to study architecture, you have to learn, you have to develop the skill to live between mind and fingertips. Nothing can be more important than what is happening in your mind and how you are able to express it using your hand and fingers, using different medium of expression. You should also know how to work on construction site. You should know how to sketch, how to draw, how to paint. You should know how to do programming, how to use the mouse, how to use computers. And you should also know for future 3D printing, computer programming, the newly developing skills. Also, you must learn so that you will continue to live between your mind and your fingertips and produce good works. I hope I was audible and the presentation was clear to all of you. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I think most of the people and the freshers who are there would have really understood and got to know how inspiring this particular thing was, whatever you showed. It was really inspiring for me also to tell. So on that note, sir, shall we move on to the question and answer thing, sir?
Yeah, sure.
So probably if everyone can hear me, let's just go by a process. So what I would do is in my screen, whoever is showing the name is there, I will just unmute them and I will just call out their name. So if you have any questions, you can directly ask Harimohan Pillai sir that question and he will be able to answer you. So I think I'll start with this young person who's there, who's called R. Subhavarshini. If you can hear me, I'm unmuting you. Yes, Subhavarshini, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
So you can ask Harimohan Pillai sir any questions if you have.
No, sir. I have understood how the architecture is and how the idea sir gave, which was very inspiring. Actually, I have got it more, and I have to do more in this architecture field.
What are you doing? Which year are you studying?
Sir, no, sir. I was just completed 12th standard. I'm preparing for NATA examination.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Good.
Sir.
All the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good. Thanks, Subhavarshini. All the best for your NATA exams. Do well.
Okay,
Hope you
sir.
got inspired today.
Yes, sir.
I'll mute you. Next is Nandita Sharma. I'm unmuting you. If you have any questions, you can ask. Nandita, can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
If you have any questions, you can ask, sir.
Sir, I want to know the full form of MEP that you said the years of architecture.
Okay, MEP is short for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. Okay.
Okay.
Mechanical means air conditioning comes under mechanical, electrification, and plumbing. So these are the three important services which is there in any building. Okay, it's called MEP. Generally, it is called services, but technical people call it as a MEP. Because that is a way. It's actually basically American way of saying MEP. They don't say services; they say MEP. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Nandita, for your question.
Thank you, sir.
Shiva Prakash.
Yes, I know Shiva Prakash.
Is it, sir? Yeah, I'm just unmuting him. I can't unmute Shiva Prakash. Shiva Prakash, can you unmute yourself?
Yes,
yeah.
Sir.
Yes, Shiva, how are you?
Fine, sir.
Yeah.
I don't have any doubts, sir.
Don't have any doubts?
Yes, sir.
Good. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
All the best. Keep working. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Shiva Prakash. I'm moving to Yatin Mohe. If you have any questions.
Oh, my friend.
Yeah. Sir, can you unmute yourself? Yatin sir.
Rani, Yatin Moge is here.
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Yatin Moge. Kya haal hai?
Oh, nice
Very happy to see you.
after so long.
I know. We have been missing. Thanks to Corona, we are meeting again.
Yeah. So,
Good to see you.
taking up the same context of Corona,
Yeah.
this exciting enlightenment and whatever you told about architecture, which I have gone through for so many years, but it was so good to go back to school and hear it from you.
Yeah.
I would just like to ask whether is this going to undergo a tremendous change after we come back, after the lockdown is done up with, and what are your
Yes, I believe so. Already the change is on, and people who are jumping onto the bandwagon will be the first to win the race. Now what you see right now, we are part of it. This is education. Education is going to be like this. If universities and colleges don't take to this, nobody will join architecture in future. Because people may want to learn architecture sitting at home. Universities will have to enroll students. They will have to, of course, fees and all, everything will have to be paid depending upon what kind of facilities universities have to communicate, what kind of teachers they have on their enrollment, so that good architects, good teachers can become part of universities to teach. So this is one big change which is going to happen. Because can you imagine in US, I'm just giving you today's news. People are worried in Oxford and Cambridge that students will not return to hostels in future. What will
Sorry,
happen
sir,
to
but
Oxford
I'm
and
not
Cambridge?
able to hear.
I'm telling you today's news. I'll tell you today's news. Hello, can you hear me?
Sir, I think
Yeah, can
I
you
can
hear me
hear you
now?
very well.
See, it is today's news that Cambridge and Oxford universities are worried that students will not return to the campus. Nobody wants to go back to hostels. So if students don't want to go back to hostels, nobody wants to go back to campus, all the colleges, all the universities all over the world will have to innovate teaching. So this is going to change the way teaching is happening. Same thing will happen to profession also. So we have to innovate. So Yatin sir, your question is very, very valid. We have to now do a lot of overtime work to understand how we will run our profession, how we will teach, how we will run our profession. We have to discover new methods and we have to work towards it. This is one classic example. Today, I never ever dreamt that I will take a class like this in which people from all over India will sit and talk to me. And I could not imagine this would happen. But this has happened in the just because of last 1 month's problems. Otherwise, I would be sitting in Shashi School of Architecture talking to some students there. Am I right, Rupesh?
Yes, sir. True that.
If life was normal, I would have, like, every year I have been coming to your college and giving talk to people. Every year I am doing this. This is the first time it is happening. I'm not coming to your college, but that has connected me to everybody all over India.
Online.
So
yes,
this
true,
is a big change. And Yatin sir, this change is going to be there, and we have to prepare for it.
Good. Thank you, Yatin sir, for your question. The next person, I think it is Mayur Gohil. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Sir, myself Mayur Goyal. I'm from Surat.
Yes. How are you?
It's a nice experience to hear you. This is something out of the syllabus. Sometimes what we got to, we sometimes we stuck with the design problem, and then we don't know how. I'm just third year student. We don't know sometimes how to solve problem. We just go to our faculty and we discuss, and there are so many points in your presentation that can help to solve the design, how previously was architecture was done, how previously the model making and field work was done. That was something out of the syllabus thing.
Now life is going to be out of the syllabus now.
Yeah.
Right now we are living out of syllabus life.
Yeah.
And it is going to be like this quite some time. So you have to innovate. You have to innovate learning. Okay.
Really, thank you this network to that I can attend this seminar.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you, Mayur. Coming from Surat, thank you for connecting. Next question, I think it will go to Arlene Senthilvel, ma'am.
Oh, please call me Arlene. Yeah,
Okay.
thank
I'm
you,
sorry
sir.
if I was.
So wonderful to listen to you. It's my
Hello.
first experience of listening to you.
Hello, madam. Good
Your
evening.
lectures. I've only seen the website and yeah.
Okay.
So my question to you is, I've already actually sent it by the mail.
Yes, I have seen your questions.
Okay.
Do you want to change the order of question or same order?
I don't know. If you have time, you can.
Yeah. See, I think I have answered also, because in today's digital
Okay.
and virtual age, do students of architecture need to engage in drawing to learn? Yes, they have to. I have already answered this, because
Yeah,
all these
yes.
skills
So
are
that's,
forever.
yeah, okay. Yeah,
You have to visualize. So drawing
yeah.
becomes a very important basic skill.
Okay.
Can slow learners be encouraged to engage with drawing only and avoid digital exploration? Now, this is a very important question. I like this question the most. Can slow learners be encouraged to engage with drawing only and avoid digital explorations? Avoiding digital exploration is not necessary, but slow learners must be encouraged to engage with drawing and coloring, because why they are slow learners is because they have not developed their motor skills and the connect of their motor skills with their visualization in a normal way, the way other normal human beings develop. That is why they are slow learners. Why they are slow learners is that their skills things don't go into their mind and from their fingers. The connect is not so that use of colors, making models, hands-on work becomes very important, because slow learners, when they work with their hand, they feel thrilled to see something which they have created. And when then it is appreciated by others, they feel more thrilled and they develop confidence. What slow learners need is confidence building. Because I have come across many slow learners, and this is the method I have used to encourage them to keep on working with hands, and they get a sense of achievement when they create things and others praise their work. So,
okay, sir. Okay.
very important for slow. And finally, do you think to provide good architectural design one needs to engage additional? Yes, 100%. See, if we don't today learn what is 3D printing of buildings, we will be nowhere after 10 years. The architects will have to retire. Anyway, I am already retired, but other architects will have to retire. Presently, practicing architects don't understand how to do 3D printing of buildings. Computer programming and 3D printing is going to be 100% part of our professional life very soon. You see, I would not have believed in 1979 when I was a final year student that someday I will be sitting like this and talking to people all over India. Even the word computer was not heard of. Computer programming was an elective subject in my final year, which fortunately I took, and I learned computer programming, fundamentals of computer programming. But today, where are we? So we have to continuously learn. I learned computers just as a hobby when I saw that somebody is teaching something in one small roadside shop. I went and saw a very old PC 8088 processor. You can't even imagine. It had a green color monitor. Nobody has even seen those things. I started learning with one finger. I did not even know how to work on a keyboard. There was no mouse those days. So you have to continuously upgrade your skill, madam. So your third question is also very, very valid. You have to upgrade your skill. Without skill upgradation, there is no profession. Outsourcing is silly. Outsourcing you can do if you have too much work. But then if you have ordinary, normal work, it is silly to outsource. You must put your skills to use instead of outsourcing. After all, what is outsourcing? It is using somebody else's skills. So if you don't use your skills, everything will get rusted. As simple as that.
I mean, the profession is becoming more of a business management, sir.
No, see, but that will change now, because today it is not possible. Today's world is changing. Now outsourcing will become very difficult, because who will do the work? Of course.
Skill development is
skill. Actually, have you noticed one thing? In the last 1 or 2 months of lockdown period, all over the world, entire humanity has developed their different skills. Everybody is learning how to cook, correct? Everybody is learning how to draw. Everybody is learning how to do this, and they are sharing their skills. That is the 90% of the humanity, 99% of humanity is involved in sharing skill development. Why nobody has told them to do it? Why are they doing it? Why are they doing it? You have to really think why people are doing this, because that is the most important part of our life. We should continuously develop our skills. Society is doing it. The entire world is doing it in the last 2 months. Everywhere on Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere you see either people are singing songs, or people are dancing, or people are cooking things, people are drawing, they're developing skills, and they will learn out of it. They will enjoy life after this. They will enjoy life more. All those who are developing skills in the lockdown period, their life will be more enjoyable after the lockdown. I'm 100% sure.
Thank
Skill
you.
development is extremely important. Yeah,
Important. Yeah, it is the future. They will be most sought after.
yeah, they will be sought after.
Good,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Ma'am, thank you so much for these questions. Really helped us a lot. Yeah. I'll go to the next person. I think it's Ram Kumar. I'll just unmute you. Ram Kumar, can you hear us? Can you unmute?
Hello, sir.
Hello,
Yes, Ram Kumar, you can ask your questions.
Hello, sir. Good evening. And
Good evening.
myself, Ram Kumar from Tamil Nadu. I'm just studying 12th standard right now. And
12th
I'm
standard,
very
okay.
glad to be part of your wonderful lecture. And it was quite helpful for me to define my career after 12th standard.
Okay, you're welcome. Very good. All the
Yes, sir.
best. All the best.
I want to ask you one thing.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, I'm much interested in both architecture and environmental engineering equally. So I want to ask you that whether I would be able to pursue some career options if I have a combination of both architecture and environmental engineering, and what will be the scope of such a combination?
It is definitely possible in today's world. You can do architecture, and I spoke about landscape architecture in my talk, correct? Landscape
Yes, sir.
design. You noticed that landscape
yes, sir.
design is related to environmental planning, environmental design, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I also spoke about building services, but I did not talk about services within the environment. Environmental engineering is all about how to manage water resources, how to manage our different resources. And when you study architecture, you are studying the built environment. So environmental engineering is, you can do architecture and then go for master's in environmental engineering. You will easily get admission. Okay. If you do Bachelor of Architecture, you can do masters in environmental engineering, a 2-year course, and then if you enter the profession, you will become an expert on built environment, city planning, city development, how to manage resources in a city, water supply. You understand? So it is all the interrelated subject. Environment engineering is very much part. It is like the bloodline of built environment. Environment engineering today is the bloodline of the built environment of the cities. And with the digital world and with smart cities is a real thing today, right? You must have heard of smart cities. So
yes, sir. Yeah.
For smart city management, we need wonderful environmental engineers. And if an architect becomes an environmental engineer, if he gets into smart city management, you will be a very good professional. So it's a wonderful field that you are thinking about. Good combination.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ram Kumar. Very intelligent question. All the best to you.
Yeah, sir. Thank you.
Next person, I think I'll go to Srinita, ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear me? Srinita, ma'am? Okay, I think we'll move to the next person. Niveda, can you hear us?
Yeah, hello everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Niveda from Chennai. I finished my BR from Hindustan University, Chennai in 2019. Your presentation and your speech was like really refreshing for me after a year of finishing my course. So yeah, thank you so much for this wonderful experience.
Start working.
Join with you all. Yeah.
Start working on construction site.
Oh, okay, sir.
You have to. Without that, there is no architecture.
Yeah. So I'm actually interested in, sustainable architecture and urban planning.
Definitely, you must work on construction site to understand how to create sustainable.
Okay.
Try to work on a site where sustainable projects are getting implemented. Because when you talk about sustainable architecture, very, very prudent use of building materials is important without wasting materials.
Yeah.
The biggest problem why we are not able to do sustainable architecture in the urban world is massive waste of building materials. Why we call rural architecture and simple town life architecture, sustainable architecture. Why we call small things sustainable architecture, rural areas and all that? Because they don't waste material. In urban areas, there is massive wastage of material. So if you have to first understand how to design, construct without wasting material. If at all you want a sustainable architecture, the core principle has to be no wastage from everything to be used from cradle to, there is a word called from cradle to the grave. Understood?
Yeah.
There should be no wastage from cradle to the grave. So that is something which you have to understand, and you will not understand by attending classes. You have to be on a construction site. You have to do a project. You have to work. I suggest you go to Auroville and work for 3 years under some architect there. Auroville or such organizations are doing wonderful work. In Lorry Baker's Nirmiti Kendra and such organizations, they are doing such works where minimum wastage is prime objective of construction. Because sustainability cannot be achieved with wastage. As simple as that. Wastage of energy, wastage of material, and wastage of manpower also. So that is something which you have to understand. All right. Okay.
I understand. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I'm still in search of job, though it's been a year, but I hope to get one soon.
No, it's too much. A year is too much. You must immediately go and find the first job that you get and join, because you can't be selective. You can't be selective when you graduate. Join anywhere, but be it construction site. I mean, you have to be ready to do anything and learn as a fresh graduate. You can't be choosy actually.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Niveda. All the best.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Sendilvel, sir. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear?
Yes,
hello,
sir.
Hello.
It's very clear.
Yeah. Hi. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Great. Nice seeing you.
Good to be part of your conversation again.
Tell me.
It's actually a rip-off of the question which my wife asked a little earlier. She was talking about outsourcing.
Okay.
It's a little one step beyond. I'm talking about collaboration. What is the future of architecture and design as a collaborative initiative? Is it possible for me as an architect or any architect to be able to practice on his own? Because
yes. Actually, I have an idea, but I don't know if people will. I'm sure some intelligent people will take it up, and they will be also thinking. See, we were all, as architects, we were working in isolation all these days.
Absolutely, yeah.
Architect's office, structural engineer's office, MEP office, contractor's office, this fellow's office, that fellow's office, client's office, and not agreeing on many things, finally agreeing on something on the construction site and making a building. Am I right? That is what we have been doing. But now is the time of collaborative approach. That means you should have an office. I mean, this is one idea. That you should have an office for a project.
Right.
Not architect's office, not contract. It's a project office.
Yes. It's
Client is also an employee of that project office or a partner of that project office.
Right.
So, and now with this digital world, it is very easily possible to create a virtual project office. I'm planning to do it. I'm giving you an idea. You get a project, you start a virtual project office, have virtual conferences, let everybody sit in own office wherever they are, or living room or wherever. But everything happens in that virtual project office. All documents are maintained in that virtual project office. Shareable BIM model. BIM is going to work in a big way in this kind of virtual project offices. I think virtual project office is the future of architectural practice if we want to work without much disturbance in our projects, because it's becoming difficult to get out of the house now. So I don't know, but we have to do projects. We can't live without projects. We have to get projects done.
Projects have to also be built. I mean,
projects also, and even while projects, see, with robotics and all these things, projects can go on, and you can install video cameras at night. Also, you can get up and see what is happening on the construction site. So this kind of digital connectivity and project offices are going to be the future of practice. I mean, that's
a paradigm shift.
What I feel. Yeah, paradigm shift. There has to be a paradigm shift like this. We have to experiment and learn. I'm trying to experiment with one of my friends, and let us see how it works.
We have site offices now, so we are talking.
Yeah, but all that will go. Site office also will be part of that.
Site is not reachable at most times now.
In the name of site office, all you need is a video camera there, which is streaming what is happening on the site to the project office and to all the laptops. Maybe like that. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. Excellent.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sendilvel, sir, for your question. Next, I think we've already asked Nandita Sharma her questions. I think so. This next person is Rupa. Can you hear us?
Hi, sir.
Hello.
Hi, sir.
Rupa.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, sir. This is Rupa from Sasi Creative School of Architecture.
Yes, Rupa.
I'm doing my third year.
Okay.
Sir, hope you're all fine and safe at home.
Yeah, that's why we are sitting like this.
Good. Yeah.
Otherwise, you would have seen a mask or a kind of a ventilator around me if I was not.
Yes, sir. Yes. So your class was really very informative and motivating. And this was my first webinar which I am attending, and it was really helpful and so useful.
There'll be in future there'll be many more because this is going to be live.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Expecting for more.
Yeah.
And the question which I would like to pose is, do we still have scope and importance for manual works?
Very good question. See, very good question, because we are talking about skills, manual skills. All the best of historic buildings were created because of manual skills. Even today, buildings are created because of manual skills. Manual skills will be there even if robots come in construction site and construct buildings. It will be very interesting to see. Our population is so much of Earth that manual skills only can survive. Have to be there as part of the construction which is happening all over Earth. But the future, if you look at future, in the next 50 years, I'm sure there'll be housing colonies on Moon and Mars and all these places where manual skills will not be required. So this absence of manual skills will be there. It's already absence of manual skills is there in outer space, correct? Everything has to be automated. So automated skills will become part of construction. Already there are so many automated skills which are there on construction site, you can see. But manual skills are almost 80% of the things which happens on construction site are still manual, in spite of so much of automation. It will continue to be so because after all, you can't stop a human being from touching something, lifting something, putting something there. I mean, nobody wants to become that dumb, that lazy. People people like to be lazy, but not that lazy, correct? So manual skills will remain, it will be there, but only in difficult conditions. We will develop technology, which is already developed. It will further develop for construction in difficult conditions like underwater construction, outer space construction. These kind of difficult conditions, or supposing we have to construct in a highly contaminated area. Supposing we have to construct in an area which is contaminated because of some nuclear thing, or do some operations in an area which is contaminated and also isolated, but we have to work there. Human being cannot go there. So naturally, we'll have to develop skills in robots who can go and do those kind of work, because we don't know what will happen tomorrow. Anything can happen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Look at this little virus. What a disruption it has created all over the world.
Yes.
And we have created, and overnight, the entire world has created contraptions which are not manual in nature. I mean, you can even wash your hand without human help, correct?
Yes, sir.
There are so many things which are coming up. So human ingenuity will keep creating these kind of contraptions and machines. But I think on Mother Earth, manual interventions can never stop, because human beings have to. Otherwise, it will stop only when, with evolution, we will lose our hands. We have to lose our hands. As long as our hands are there, we have to work. I mean, that is why nature has given us hands.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, hands will start growing smaller and smaller.
Yes, sir.
It will take again another 1,000,000 years for that to happen.
Yes.
So let us hope that not in our lifetime, at least. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Rupa, for your question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So next we've got Professor Gayatri ma'am there on the line. Yeah.
Yes.
Ma'am, can you hear us? Ma'am, can you unmute your audio? If you can do it. And if you can hear me. then we discussed it here, and Sobia Momin, ma'am, can you hear us? Sobia Momin, can you hear us? Okay. Devikala, can you hear us? Devikala, can you hear us? You're in the line. Hello?
Hello.
Hello, Devikala, can you hear us?
Hello. Yeah, I can hear.
Good, good. Ma'am, you can ask your question, ma'am, to Harimohan sir.
I don't have actually any question. This was more to understand the field. My daughter is actually planning to get into a design course. So
Okay.
I just wanted to, know a little more, beyond the design course. I guess somewhere architecture is also connected to this design course program. So I just wanted to hear out what sir has to, tell us.
Okay.
I'll want to, listen to more of sir's lectures. Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. Good.
Yeah.
Sir, you have anything to say? Please.
Yeah, in fact, in my presentation, I had spoken about the importance of architects going into other disciplines like product design, in fashion design, because when you study architecture, you learn fundamentals of design as far as building construction is concerned. But it also prepares one to design other objects. Many people do masters in product design and go on. So design, actually, what has happened is that we have to do a big change in our school education. What the madam asked a very relevant question, because many parents wonder what to do for a design course. Problem is that if you look at our school education, if you do biology, you know that you can study medicine. If you do maths, you know that you can study engineering. There is nothing which tells you that you want to become a designer, what you should study in school. So this is where our school education should think in terms of starting art and design as a third stream in school. Like if you do art and design, fundamental design, which can be easily taught from 9th standard onwards, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th, if you learn art and design, because that is the age of children when their fingers are very growing fingers, they can do wonderful things. In primary schools and secondary schools, they have a subject called craft, art and craft. I believe that after 6th or 7th standard, they should change their subject art and craft and make it into a stream called art and design in all CBSE and ICSE, all schools across India. I had actually written a long letter to Ministry of HRD regarding this. I hope they do it, that they should convert the art and craft subject in school to art and design as a stream from at least 8th standard onwards, so that it becomes a parallel stream. Those who do this subject and pass 12th standard, only they can apply for architecture, fashion design, product design, interior design, these kind of design courses. So you don't have to do biology to go and study architecture. If you do biology, botany, you go and do medicine. You only need to do fundamental mathematics to become a designer. You don't have to do higher mathematics. So you do higher mathematics, physics, chemistry, etc. to become an engineer. You do biology, zoology, chemistry, and environment, and all this to become a doctor or related medical discipline. And you do art and design as a subject till 12th standard to become a designer. So thank you for this question, ma'am. Actually, this change has to happen right from school education level. I hope Ministry of if parents write this, if schools write this, they should introduce this third stream in school. That's what I feel.
Thank you, Devikala ma'am, for your question. Krishna Priya, can you hear us? Krishna Priya, are you there in line? Okay, we can't hear her, so we'll go to the next person. Bhumika M, are you there in line? Can you hear us? Bhumika M, are you there in line? Can you hear us? Okay. We'll just check this person, so the last person, I think. Sobia, can you hear us? Okay, I think we are good, sir. I think we are done. We've already given time for them. Gayatri ma'am, are you there in line? Can you hear us, ma'am?
Yes, I am there in line. Sir,
Yes, yes.
thank you very much.
Welcome. You're most welcome. Yeah. Tell me.
Instead of coming all the way, as you said, traveling so many kilometers, this is good enough to speak to the whole nation.
You connected me. The nation wants. You made me. Nation wants to know.
Good. Actually, there were a few more. I guess there was some problem because more students were there. Anyways, sir, thank you very much. It was nice of you to, in the last moment, to finalize everything and get things done.
No, it was.
And Rupesh was there to coordinate.
Rupesh, I must thank Rupesh because yesterday I was a little worried because we were not connecting. But connection.
No.
Actually, I find it very simple. It is very simple. Actually, it is all connected very fast. No problem.
Thanks to Arun also, because you are
Arun, yes, our support team is also here.
Yeah, support team. Could you do recording of this? Did you I had asked?
I guess Arun has done the recording.
Okay,
Arun?
wonderful. Please. Yeah, you can just share that sometime as a whatever.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That Rupesh will coordinate that, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you
Rupesh.
so much,
Arun,
sir.
thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, ma'am.
Bye.
Thanks, ma'am.
Bye, sir.
Thanks, Arun.
Arun, thank you.